Hello everyone. Today I have a new video, and it's not about a computer. Well, I mean, it technically is. Game consoles, as you all know, they're computers, bro. Alright? They're just computers that have a more defined purpose. Kind of the same thing with smartphones. Smartphones are also computers, but have a defined purpose. Today, we're going to be talking about the Nintendo Gamecube. Why? Because I like the Nintendo Gamecube. So, Nintendo Gamecube is my first console. I think I got it probably around when I was 5 years old, give or take. So the early 2000s, not long after this guy was actually released back in 2001. Honestly, it is regarded as one of Nintendo's worst systems. I think the Wii U just beat it as the worst Nintendo system. And we're talking about mainline. So the N64 disk drive and the Virtual Boy are kind of out of the question when we're talking about the worst systems, because let's be real, those things sucked. I mean, the Virtual Boy literally had 20 games and the 64 disk drive was basically a failed product out of the box. I have a lot of love for the GameCube. I've had this one for over 15 years. I believe the first 3 titles that I got were Super Smash Bros. Melee, Sonic Heroes, which I broke, and Namco Museum 50th Anniversary Edition. Sonic Heroes was awful, but the other 2 games are pretty solid. As a matter of fact, Super Smash Bros. Melee is still regarded as one of the, if not the best, Smash Bros. Game of all time. Smash Ultimate is really awesome. Buy it if you haven't already. And I know this isn't a normal, computer video, but if you guys do want to see more of that, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to see my future videos, and make sure to look at our past My Life is a Mess videos to see those as well. I make a lot of videos about technology and computers that I think you guys might actually like. Anyway, why am I talking about the Nintendo GameCube today? Other than the fact that I like it as a system, I did want to do a little bit of investigation. Of course, this is still a tech channel, so I want to know what the specs are, and of course why it failed. Because Nintendo GameCube, I think, sold a whopping 22 million units. It was 2 million units short of the original Xbox, but it did beat the Dreamcast at just 9 million units. But those 3 consoles are not the main reason why the GameCube failed. The main reason why the GameCube failed is the most popular or the most sold game system of all time, PlayStation 2, at a whopping 155 million units. There has never been a console generation as one-sided as the 6th generation. So if you have a PS2, I mean, good for you, but that thing was ridiculous. So I guess we'll kind of jump in with the specs. Now, obviously, I am not a madman. I don't have a teleprompter, and I don't have a photographic memory, so I'm gonna read off the specs from a Google Doc sheet that I have written down, because that's some big brain moves there. So this guy had a CPU, is a 485 megahertz IBM Gecko PowerPC CPU. So the line of CPUs in this guy was actually the same line that was in the Apple PowerPC lineup, the G3s and the G4s. I actually might have a video coming out about one of those systems, so once again, subscribe and like the video to see more of those. Hey, look at that. Foreshadowing. It was a 32-bit CPU. The GPU was a 162 megahertz ARDX designed ATI flipper. It was a whopping 9.4 gigaflops. The RAM was 43 megabytes of ununified or non-unified RAM. This basically means that the RAM in the system was compartmentalized to different parts of the system instead of just having a box of memory that all parts of the system could share from. The disk was a smaller disk. I don't know if you guys have ever looked at a GameCube disc, but these things are tiny. They're only about 8 centimeters, and they only hold about 1.5 gigabytes of storage. Now, this was actually one of the biggest contenders as to why the GameCube failed as badly as it is. So we're gonna leave the Dreamcast out of the question, because although the Dreamcast was technically part of the 6th generation of consoles, not a lot of people associated with it, because I believe it came out around 1 year prior to the PS2 and 2 years prior to the GameCube and the Xbox. A couple things with the small size of the actual disc. Number one, there wasn't a whole lot of storage. So a standard disc that was in the Xbox and the PS2, I don't know exactly how much storage it can hold.
So I was able to find that the PlayStation 2 supports both single and double layered discs. However, I wasn't able to find the same for the Xbox. There's a lot of conflicting information. However, there are a lot of Xbox games that do surpass the 4.7 gigabyte limit, leading me to believe that it also supports dual layered discs.
but a standard single layer disk is about 4.7 gigs, and a double layer is about twice that, whereas this guy has about a third of the storage on a standard single layer disk, which means a lot of third-party developers especially had a hard time making games for the system, not because of the hardware, because actually the GameCube, the 6th generation, in the 6th generation, was basically the final generation in which Nintendo decided to put power in its system. The Wii, the Wii U, and the Switch, if you look at the spec sheets of those things compared to other consoles of the same generation, they are fairly lackluster, despite the Wii and the Switch actually being very, very popular consoles. So far, the Wii actually won the 7th generation consoles in the console war. Alongside the small disc size, you can't actually put larger discs in the disc tray in the GameCube, which caused a fairly large issue during that time because DVD players were still incredibly common. They are fairly obsolete as of nowadays, but 20 years ago, DVD players was pretty much your main medium for watching any type of media, from music to movies and the like. So because the GameCube wasn't on top of a game console and actual media player and couldn't actually play DVDs, the Xbox and the PlayStation 2 both could. The PlayStation 2 actually marketed itself more towards being used for DVDs first as opposed to being a game console, which made it super popular to even non-gamers, which probably gave it a big jump as to why it had 150 million units sold. So we have three main competitors to the GameCube. Like I said, the Dreamcast, the Xbox, and the PlayStation. The Dreamcast was the first to release on September 9th of 1999. The GameCube following after, or a little after the Xbox, November 18th of 2001. The Xbox being 3 days earlier, November 15th, and the PlayStation 2 was October 16th, 2000, the previous year. Now, as I said earlier, because of the lack of third-party support due to the small size of the discs, the GameCube actually had the smallest list of games out of the entire catalog. So out of all of those four systems, the GameCube had the lowest amount of games at 552, the Dreamcast going up to 620, the Xbox going a little higher up at 864, and the PlayStation 2 having an unbelievable 3,800 games for that system. The GameCube was lacking in a couple things, despite it being fairly powerful. As a matter of fact, on paper, the GameCube was the second most powerful system, being more powerful than both the Dreamcast and the PlayStation 2. The Xbox, which was Microsoft's first system to ever enter the console war, was a very powerful system, and on paper, it looked that way too. Honest to God, the Xbox was basically a PC. It was the first console to ship with a hard drive, and it had a full Pentium processor. Despite that, the Xbox was actually fairly, I want to say, inefficient with the way it used its computing power, which actually led the GameCube to produce some pretty good-looking games that could even be on par with or surpass the looks of those on the Xbox and, of course, PlayStation 2. We have pretty much cut third-party support because of the small size of the disc, which led to less games being produced. Another thing was online play. So both the Xbox and the PlayStation 2 both had an online aspect to them. The Xbox being the more prevalent of the two, although the PlayStation 2 did have a fairly, I don't want to say unfinished, but a fairly good basic online capability. It was mainly third-party support, but the GameCube did have very limited functionality in its online support, if you ever want to call it that. There are a couple ports on the bottom of the GameCube, which one of them did allow you to actually plug a modem into it to allow for a very limited amount of games. I don't remember exactly how many, to achieve a pseudo online play. Now, that does bring us to the port selection on the GameCube. So right off the bat, you have 4 controller ports on the front. You obviously have an optical drive on top. I currently have Super Mario Sunshine in there. It's a great game, if not a big pain in the ass. We have an analog AV as well as a 12 volt in for the power. Now, I actually have the platinum version of the GameCube. This was released a little later. I believe the initial GameCube released with the purple and black version, I want to say. Those are the two main same systems for a little bit. The Platinum version was released later on as a limited edition. However, the limited edition Platinum version, which is the one I'm holding, actually kept being produced until the very end of life for the device. And you have the 2 memory slots on the front. I have a 16, I think the 16X stands for megabytes. Once again, could be totally wrong about that. I honestly don't know how big that is, but I've probably had this guy for about 12 years now, 12, 13 years. It was Mad Catz, which is very surprising how this thing hasn't exploded on me. I've had multiple Mad Catz controllers, as well as, you know, OG or GameStop controllers, but right now I'm using like this weird brand from Amazon that I bought because when I was young, I like broke literally every single one of my controllers. As I said earlier, Super Mario Sunshine is a fantastic game, but it was by far the one game that made me break most of my controllers. I think the games that I have here are, like I said, Super Smash Bros. Melee. I have Super Mario Sunshine, Zelda Twilight Princess, which is actually my favorite Zelda game of all time. I have Zelda Wind Waker, which is actually one of my least favorite Zelda games of all time. Luigi's Mansion. I actually didn't get this game until after I got my Wii. So I probably got this game close to 2008, 2009, but I have streamed this game. I've also streamed Super Mario Sunshine, and I believe I've also streamed Super Mario 64. But yeah, all awesome games. And of course, we have Metroid Prime and Metroid Prime 2 Echoes. These games are probably 2 of the most graphically impressive and amazing games on the GameCube. I mean, if you play these 2 games, they are absolutely gorgeous, both of them. They're also very, very difficult. Anyway, I guess enough about me, but I wanted to go over the GameCube because it's honestly, it was my first console. It's a really cool console. I know this video is a little bit different than stuff that I normally do. I was like, hey, I should probably do a video about it eventually, and that's the video that I'm sort of doing today. I believe I went over pretty much every single one of my points that I had. That's pretty much it. It's a damn shame that the GameCube didn't do as well as it should have, because honestly, this console had a lot of strong first-party games, even though that third-party games may not have been its strong suit. And you also have to remember that the GameCube was Samus's first time in 3D. They completely skipped over Metroid on the N64. Wind Waker and Twilight Princess were the 2 main games or Zelda games that came out for the GameCube. The Wind Waker came out relatively early in the GameCube's life, I believe in around 2002. A lot of people hated that game initially because of the art style, because I believe at Space World, some year or whatever, they showed a tech demo for a Zelda game, and it was a fairly realistic looking Ocarina of Time tech demo. But when Wind Waker released, it was like, hey, whoa, that's not what that is. Finally, when Twilight Princess was released in 2006, which was actually at the tail end of the GameCube's life, but was actually one of the launch titles, or I believe one of the launch titles for the Wii. A lot of people were stoked, and a lot of people loved the art style. The GameCube was a pretty sick console. I was actually gonna say I'm gonna miss it, but I'm probably gonna keep this thing until it dies. Then I'll probably buy another GameCube. And then when that one dies, I'll buy another GameCube. And then that will just continue forever until I bought every single GameCube in the entire world. There is no price too high that I will pay for a GameCube. I will give you both of my testicles for a GameCube. And don't you doubt that. Oh, also, completely forgot to mention this. Dude, the controller on this thing is flawless. The GameCube controller is flawless. No one can tell me anything different. This is the most comfortable controller I have ever used. I think that's all that I needed to say. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I hope you had a wonderful day. Of course, make sure to follow me on Instagram. That would be slipasnull, all lowercase. Make sure to follow me on Twitch, Extinguish My Felicity, and also make sure to follow me on Twitter, also slipasnull, except the S and the null are uppercase. You can find all those links in the description down below. And yeah, that's pretty much everything. I'm gonna go play some stuff, I guess. Okay, bye!